Hi everyone, today I'm taking a look at Zapotec, which is a 1 to 4 player Euro resource management board game designed by Fabio Lopiano and published by Board and Dice. This one takes around 60 to 75 minutes to play. Before I get into the review of Zapotec, be sure to check out the show's sponsor, keyender.co.uk, which is the place I actually picked up Zapotec from. So if you like the look of this game, be sure to check it out. But let's get into the review. So the main board for Zapotec is going to look like this, which is essentially a board divided up into 3 different sections, each of which represented by one of these kind of god statues. And furthermore, each of these sections is divided into 3 terrain types. So you've got this like muddy section here, you've got this like mountain section, and you have this forestry. And across all of these different regions, you have these building tokens scattered semi-randomly around. They're in the right spots, but they do have different resources on these buildings. And you have 3 different types of buildings. You've got these temples, you've got these residential buildings, and you also have these cornfields. And as the game goes on, we're going to be building those and placing our pieces on the board to represent what we've built. Furthermore, at the top section here, you've got these tiles which you can collect as the game goes on to give you little bonuses or additional resources. And you also have this track that runs along the right hand side board. And the idea is that we're trying to climb up this track because you're going to get little rewards as you go and little discounts and things and even victory points. But additionally, at the end of the game, whoever's climbed the highest will get more victory points than people who have fallen behind. There's also going to be a communal little card pool here where at the end of the round, whoever's finished their turn gets to draft a new card into their hand. And the number of cards in this pool is always going to be 1 more than the amount of players. So you can see here I've set up for a 2-player game because there's 3 cards on display. And there's also going to be another deck which has been randomly put there, which is a countdown to the end of the game, because this game only takes place over 5 rounds and they go by pretty quickly. Additionally, at the start of the game, there's going to be 3 of these kind of ritual cards that come out, and these are endgame bonuses and things you can choose to invest in. For example, the ones I've got here says I get 3 victory points for each pyramid level built, or this one here says I get 1 victory point for each step up on the sacrifice track. So it might be an incentive to climb that track throughout the game. And additionally, more importantly, each person has their own personal player board, which looks like this. And this part here is going to start off empty, but as the game goes on and you collect more buildings, you can build up a little resource gaining engine here. And you've also got this spot here which stores your pyramid levels and your little buildings as you can put out. And these pyramids come in 3 different levels. You've got the main one here, and you have the kind of middle section and the top section. And as you can see here, they do actually end up stacking on each other, which can be kind of one of the gameplay mechanisms, which I'll explain the relevance of shortly. And at the top of the board here, it shows all the different costs it makes to build certain buildings. So you can see here, to build a cornfield, it's going to cost me a wood and a stone. But to build a residential building, it's going to cost me a wood and a brick. And the temples are going to cost a stone and a brick. And that's pretty much it, apart from a few additional resources. So you've got the basic resources here, which are these square tiles, which are the wood, stone and brick. And you also have these more kind of more refined goods, such as this corn, these priest tokens, and also these gold coins. So how does the game actually work? So the first thing you're going to do on your turn is simultaneously all the players are going to pick one of their cards in their hand and then reveal them all at the same time. Now these cards are broken down into 3 different kind of sections. The first of which is a resource which you're going to gain. The second of which is going to show where you can build on the board, because you can see here you've got kind of 3 different types of information. The first of which is the terrain type. So this card means that I can build in any mountain area. So, you know, I can build here or I can build in this strip here. But this section here, when you've got a statue on it, it means you can build anywhere but in that god's area. So I can build in any of the terrain types as long as it's in this third of the board. And the third one is the actual building type. So this means I can only build temples this round. Now the bottom bit, which is very important, this number here, shows the initiative in which the players take their turns. And the lower numbers are faster. So if I ended up playing this 2 card, it means, yeah, I'll gain a wood, I can build on any temple, but it also means I'm pretty much guaranteed to go, well, at worst case scenario would be second, because obviously only a 1 card would beat this one. And you might ask, why do I need to build in certain areas? And that is because every round there is going to be a bonus card in the middle of the board here, which means that when it comes to the end of the round and you've taken your actions, you are going to get 2 victory points for each building you have kind of corresponding to this card here. So right now, I probably want to focus on getting as many buildings down as I can on these muddy areas, because if I do, I'm going to get 2 points each for doing so. So maybe a card like this will be really useful, or maybe a God card where a lot of the mud spaces are still available would be useful. So let's just say, for example's sake, I chose this number 10 card here because I want to build in all these muddy areas. Of course, this might mean I'm first player, it might mean I'm last player, I don't know. It depends on what other people play in terms of their initiative. But before I do, once it comes to my turn, I'm going to take that brick resource as a minimum. So again, I'll take a brick resource from the supply. And then what would normally happen is I would trigger anything in a brick row or a brick column. I have to choose one or the other. Now in the first round, you're not going to have any additional bonuses, but as the game goes on and you build buildings, let's just say I ended up building this temple like so. Now if I chose a brick, I would get the brick, and I'd also get a wood and a priest token. So you can imagine as the game goes on and this grid fills up, you can get more and more resources. And once you've taken your income, you're going to have the option to take as many capital actions as you like. And there are 4 different capital actions you can take. The first of which is to spend gold coins to acquire these bonus tiles up here, which can give you a little kind of influx of resources. You can get these little conversion tiles here, which are the level 2 tiles. So I can spend like a stone to convert it into 2 wood, or I can even spend 3 coins if I had the funds to do so to take these options here, these 3 tiles, which are really powerful, such as being able to claim a ritual card for free without having to spend the usual costs. Now you can do these as many times as you like, but you can only buy 1 of each level. So the most you could spend is 6 and get a level 1, a level 2 and a level 3. The second capital action is to build a pyramid, and to build a pyramid you need to spend one each of the basic resources, but you also need to spend one of these priest tiles, which you can get later in the game. And when you do that, you're going to take your pyramid, you're probably starting best one with the base one there, and put it on one of these spots like so. Now when you do that, you're going to select one of these bonus tiles, and from the side here, so let's just say I chose this, this residential tile like this. Now what this means is that at the end of the game, for every level of pyramid I have next to this tile, I'm going to get a bonus point for. But just because I've started that pyramid, it doesn't mean that other players cannot jump in to that points pool as well. So they could actually end up spending their resource and build the next level of the temple like so, meaning that they're also going to get a point for each residential building. And I can even finish that one off myself, and so I'm getting 2 points for each residential building. Additionally, when a pyramid is completely finished, then you are going to get 5 points per level that you've contributed to in that pyramid. The next action is to make a ritual here, where you are going to spend one of your priest tokens and put your player disc on one of these endgame scoring cards. So that's a nice way to get more points at the end. However, you can only ever build or place a token on a ritual for each level of a pyramid you've built. So again, if you built one pyramid, you can only ever claim 1 card. So those 2 things kind of tie hand in hand with one another. Additionally, if I've already placed a disc on a card, then any other player who goes there after me has to pay an additional gold for each player there before him. And the final capital action is to climb up this sacrifice track. And when you do that, you are going to spend 1 of these priest tokens and up to 5 corn tokens. Let's just say here I spent 2 to climb up a spot for each corn you spend. So I could go 1, 2, like so. When I reach these spots here, I'm going to get victory points. And these things here are either going to get me resources or get me discounts on the bonus tiles. So you can see if I climb all the way up to this spot, I can buy a level 3 bonus tile for only 1 gold. And once you've taken all the capital actions that you want to, you're going to go into the construction phase, where again you're going to abide by your card you've selected. So you can only build in these muddy areas in this example, and you're going to build as many buildings as you want to, again abiding by the costs here on your player sheet. And every time you build a building, again, you're going to spend the resources. You're also going to add them where you want on your little grid here to ensure that you get more resources the next turn. And once you finish building all the buildings you want to, you're going to have a look at that objective cards and you're going to score the amount of points depending on where you've built. So you can see here I've built 2 in the muddy area here, so therefore I'm going to get 4 points because it's going to be 2 points for each building that I've claimed. And that does not have to be just this round, that'll be an existing round as well, because the buildings you build are going to stay and remain on the board. And the final thing you're going to do is you're going to draft one of these remaining cards in the card row. So let's just say I really wanted, I don't know, this number 9 here because I like the look of that initiative. I'll add that to my hand. And now the other players will do the same thing and choose another card. But the remaining card in the pool there is going to go into the bonus card spot, meaning that is going to be the category that is going to score next round. Now the cards that you spent on the last round, as in, you remember me playing this number 10 card here, that is going to become available for the next round, as well as the card that all the other players played. And then you're also going to reveal the next card of that kind of preset deck there. And that is essentially how Zapotec plays. At the end of the game, there's going to be some additional scoring, such as who's climbed the highest on the sacrifice track there and get the corresponding amount of points. Again, if you completed a pyramid, or if you're a part of a completed pyramid, you can get 5 points for each piece that is yours, and you're going to score the points that you've invested in from these ritual cards. Okay, so let's get into the review of Zapotec. So I suppose on the face of it, this game is relatively simple. There's only like 4 things you need to focus on. Obviously building buildings, building your temple, climbing the track, and going for these ritual cards. Those are the things you're going to score for. But the way they're tied together with this little hand management system is quite clever. I like the restrictions on these cards where, well, you want to take the certain resource because the resource might be your best built up row and you're going to get a lot more resources by selecting that particular type. But at the same time, this middle section here means that you can only build in certain locations. Maybe that location's already been completely ravaged by the other players. There's nowhere else to build. So again, you need to weigh up what you want to play. But more importantly, the initiative is massive in this game. Again, because you can build as much as you want to on your turn, you can completely wipe the board before it gets to the players with the lower initiative value. Now, I quite like the idea of that, but in reality, it did become quite frustrating. But in contrary to that, the last player gets a bit more control in fact, a lot more control when it comes to what's going to score in the next phase. Because, if you know that you've got a bunch of buildings down in this section here, and you might end up taking this card so that you know that this one is going to come up for scoring in the next phase, and you're in a good position and you're going to really kind of get the rewards for doing that. Now, I do think that mechanism of that remaining card being a bonus score for the next round is better in theory than in practice, because as I said earlier, if you are not the last player, then you're going to have no control over that anyway. And if you are last player, it's going to be a pretty obvious choice what you're going to select. So it's almost taken out your hand to a point where you have no control over it whatsoever. And that almost ties into my next point here, because again, in theory, I love this idea of when you buy buildings, you're going to add them onto your player board here and build up this little engine of gaining resources. But because the game is so fast and it starts off with nothing on here, because you are only playing 5 rounds, it feels like you're always going to just choose the row or column where you have the most cards of. So if I have a bunch of, well, I've got a scattered arrangement here, but if I had, say, 3 stone cards, then I'm just going to put it in my stone row and then keep spamming it every single time rather than kind of diversifying. So it almost felt like it was pre-written on what you're going to do. I'm just going to put them in that row and just getting the most resources as I want and not really care about what I'm getting, because there's only 3 different resource types anyway. Yes, you've got the 3 different advanced types as well, but it almost feels like you just get what you can and then spend everything. I didn't really feel that need or that desire or that satisfaction of planning my turns carefully. I just thought, I'll get the maximum output I can and just work with what I've got. I do like this idea of building these pyramids to score a certain category. If you, at the end of the game, you've really tailored your strategy to get a particular type of building or in a certain zone, then if you really focus on that, I suppose that could pay off. However, I did feel like it was somewhat expensive in order to do that, because if you only get a few of them, then there's only going to be a few extra points, where in reality we spent 4 resources in order to do that. I suppose that's probably why they've added this extra incentive of when a pyramid's complete, then you get 5 points per level that's yours. But that almost feels like a way to make up for the fact that it's not that inviting in the first place. I was also left a little bit confused as to why the game was divided into 2 action phases, as in the construction actions and the capital actions. It almost seemed weird why you had to do one before the other and you couldn't do them interchangeably. And that was also like difficult to relay to the other players because I couldn't find a reason why that was. Now, I might be missing something there, but I kind of just let other people do what they wanted. If you want to build first, then maybe climb the track, build a temple, then build some more. I just let that happen. I didn't see why, again, that had to be a strict method in that way that was resolved. It just seemed a little bit convoluted and fiddly for the sake of it. But that being said, the game does have a pretty decent game arc to it. You start off with pretty much nothing, and by the end of it, you're getting a whole bunch of resources and getting much more done. Additionally, you can actually utilise these bonus tiles to quite a good order, especially at the end of the game, where you want to buy this tile, which will get you these resources, and then you might have a little conversion engine where you can convert one thing into another, and then that thing into something else, and you can end up getting a whole bunch of resources, way more than what you started with, and that can let you pull off bigger moves that you probably didn't initially anticipate. So yeah, I quite like that level of a small degree of engine building there and those conversion trees to get more and more done. I think that one of the main talking points people are going to take from this game is how quick it does take to play. As the box suggests, you can comfortably get this done in 60 to 75 minutes, maybe even quicker than that when you are playing with 2 players, which is great because it does actually feel like a full comprehensive Euro game. And you know what, even if this game was, say, 20 minutes longer, I wouldn't have held that against it either, because again, it does feel like you're getting a full Euro game here, and not many of them skew towards that 60-minute mark. There is a fair amount of player interaction in the game, mainly through the hand management initiative system. But additionally, you've got that passive interaction here where if people get the ritual cards before you have to pay extra gold. The competition to climb the track and get those bonus points at the end of the game. And of course, just the general snapping up buildings before other people do, and even getting these bonus tiles before other players do. Additionally, you can actually piggyback on other people's temples by getting your level in there, which again may alter the scoring at the end of the game. The game does scale pretty well because if you add more players into the game, then there's just going to be more buildings filling up these spots. So again, regardless of that player count, it's always going to be relatively tight. So I think there's no actual preference whether I play this at 2, 3 or 4 players. Now, I haven't played the solo mode, but it does come with one. But yeah, unfortunately, I cannot comment on that. The production for the game is a bit of a mixed bag. We'll start with some of the positives. These temples are absolutely brilliant. They snap together wonderfully and they look really great when they are on the table. And I also don't dislike the little wooden buildings as well. I think these might even be reused from like Teotihuacan or something. They look quite familiar. But yeah, most things are absolutely fine. Now, the cardboard itself is a little bit light and it feels a bit cheap. But more importantly, I think these tokens, or the resource tokens, look pretty abysmal. Very bland looking and just not very nice or tactile to play with. The player sheets as well are a bit flimsy. They're pretty much just paper. So yeah, a mixed bag with the production, but again, nothing overly negative, but it could have been a little bit more polished. Okay, so let's get into my final thoughts on Zapotec, which I have to say has definitely been one of my most anticipated games from the last year or so. I had the kind of quiet confidence that I would enjoy this one because it's almost like an adjacent game to the T series, which Board and Dice are well known for. But additionally, that extra fact that this game does take only 60 minutes to play was like, oh, this could be something to really hit home for me and could get to the table regularly. And something that is positive, that it does feel like a pretty comprehensive Euro game for that time frame. However, the decision space in the game was a bit lacking for me. It seemed pretty obvious on what you needed to do or what you should do. And more importantly, when it did come down to something that was a bit more brain burnery and what you should do to play optimally in relation to gaining the resources that you need and plan your next turn, it seemed like that was more work than was warranted, or more effort than that I really was willing to put into it. So it'd always be like, I'd always just choose this row, get as many resources as I can and just spam the board with what I could, and that would usually work out for the best. So yeah, unfortunately that kind of gameplay isn't going to keep me reaching back for this one, and I almost feel like I was just going through the motions. But that being said, there was some promising things here, like that card system, drafting back into your hand, but also being wary of what's going back into the scoring pool for the next round. Very cool concept there, but one that just failed slightly in practice for me and wasn't as big of a factor as I would have hoped for. So yeah, all these little things, the little problems I had with the game just built up for me to leave it or to leave me, again, lukewarm at best on the overall design. So unfortunately not one I can recommend. I would stay towards those more traditional Meteor T games if you're looking for something with this setting and Euroness, but hey, a good effort I suppose, but something that's not really going to stick around for me, and I'm not going to request to play it anymore. So that is Zapotec by Fabio Lopiano and Board and Dice.